Hey, what's going on, everybody? We're back from How To Tech to show you how to disassemble this Motorola Moto X Pure. I just barely got this. I would have had it a lot earlier for you, but Motorola can't get their freaking shipping straight. But hey, whatever, that's a rant for a different video. So what we're going to need to do this disassembly is we'll need a heat gun to help us pry off the back cover. We'll need also a Torx 5 screwdriver, a couple of opening tools, so either guitar picks or playing cards work well. Guitar picks for this one work a little bit better, stuck on there pretty stinking good. And then a couple of additional opening tools. Nylon spudger was what we're going to be using 99% of the time. That dental picks is going to help us get the back cover off. The first we need to do is go ahead and eject the SIM card slot out of the phone. We can go ahead and pull that off. Now with that done, the next step is to actually go ahead and heat up the back. So we're going to use our heat gun and heat up the back, and this isn't the same thing as trying to remove a display out of a phone, so really you can get away with probably just using a hair dryer for this at this point. So just work your way around the back side of the phone, get it nice and warm. We're not trying to melt the plastic here, all we're trying to do is loosen adhesive. So if you do underheat it, it's not the end of the world. It's not going to destroy anything. This back is actually really resilient. We're just going to tug on it here in just a few seconds, but it does make it a little bit easier for it to remove, and you won't have to stress so much about ripping anything underneath it. There are a couple ribbon cables and a couple of plastic grommets, but we'll get to that once we pull the back off. Now the easiest way that I find to do this is to actually take a tool and stick it in the back. There's a little tiny hole here at the very top. You can see I'm starting to push away the screen. This will help not damage your back in any visible way. It can be a little tricky to do holding whatever you're using to push in there and pry it up, and then a guitar pick. Now I actually lost part of my video, so I had to edit it. I'd already stuck a guitar pick in there, so pull it up and just put your guitar pick in, and then work your way around the side of the device. Work your way down the side. And this is really tough 3M adhesive they have on this phone. It was pretty tricky to get this to pop off. So just trying to pry up with the guitar pick. Now if it does feel like it's sticking back down, you can use more heat to help pull it up. You can see here all that black double-sided tape there. You can use a spudger to help pry it off as well if you need to get in a little bit deeper in the back of the phone. And one thing that is a little scary, that the camera cover, the little dimple on the back of the phone actually is removing with the back piece as well, and that's completely fine. It's not held in place with anything, just the back cover holds it down. So we'll just try a playing card and see if we can't use this to give us a little bit of leverage. Make sure that none of the glue reattaches as we're heating it back up to give us a little bit easier time to remove this back. So let's work the heat gun around and get it nice and warm. Alright, it shouldn't take as long this time because we've already heated it up once. Now we can go ahead and just pry the back off some more, and now I'm just going to use my hand. The back it's pretty flexible, so you don't have to worry about damaging it. Now when it comes to the other backs, I'm not really sure how this would work, the wood and that kind of stuff. I'm guessing it's probably just adhered on the same way with 3M rubberized adhesive, and you may just need to be a little bit more careful with those backs and maybe use a little bit more heat. So just pulling this away from the phone, you can see that it's really stuck on there. I'm using a lot of force to pull this off, but I'm not yanking. I'm pulling it, let the adhesive remove itself. Now right here is a ribbon cable you want to be careful of. And then that attaches to the power button, volume button ribbon cable as well. So just be careful not to damage that as you're removing the back cover. And so close. Always want to be careful of those edges, don't want to crease them too much. Perfect. Now that we have the back removed, we can start to go ahead and pull this tape off. Now, like I was saying, the dimple in the middle of the phone was starting to pry off, so once you remove tape, it'll probably just fall off, and that's 100% okay. So just try to remove as much of this as possible to make it entering the phone a little bit easier. Also, we're trying to remove this adhesive to get to all the screws that are underneath. We need to see how many screws there are here. There's a whole bunch of black Torx 5 screws around the perimeter of the phone. And there's one additional one right in the middle to the left of the camera. And you can see it's inside of a little kind of a cubby hole. But we're just going to work on pulling this adhesive off here real fast. and then we'll go ahead and start with the disassembly of the back of the phone. Now, if you've done a Nexus 6, or you've watched the Nexus 6, this phone is almost identical to that phone. So if you've done that before, this will be a piece of cake. It's not an extremely hard phone to disassemble. There's not a ton of parts in there, but there is one new piece which caught me off guard, which is the volume button, power button. We'll talk about that when we get there, but if you're trying to replace that, make sure you take your time. There are some tiny little pieces in there you don't want to lose, but I'll show you how to put it back together and how to take them off without losing it. So just working away off all this 3M tape here. Alright, we're doing pretty good now. Let's go ahead and take some of these screws out. You can see around the perimeter there's many screws in here. Let's see, we have a total of 20 screws that we're going to remove, and I'll start down here in the bottom right hand corner. Now, I don't like to fast forward through my videos to give you guys an idea of how long this total repair takes, so if you need to skip forward, feel free to do so. Just bear with me for a few seconds. I'll just take these out pretty quick. Now, the one thing that you do not want to remove at this point is the silver screw in the back of the phone. That is what holds the volume and the power button down. And you don't have to remove that. It's part of the back of the phone, not part of the phone assembly. So to take the back off, we don't have to remove that, so don't stress about that one either. One thing also worth mentioning is these are really tight in there. And I really have to put a lot of pressure on it when I start to unscrew it so I don't strip the screw out. Which is, they're stuck in there a lot tighter than most phones have screws put in, especially this particular one. So just be careful of that when removing. You don't want to strip any of these out, because that'll just make the repair so much more difficult to remove screws out of. So like I was saying, I would have had this phone a little bit earlier, but Motorola, in their infinite wisdom, I guess what a lot of other companies do as well, is they ship a complete order together. And I'd ordered a Motorola 360, a Moto G, the same time as this phone through Moto Maker. And if you know any of the hubbub about those Moto 360s, is some of the metal link bands weren't in stock, and I had to wait 6 weeks to get this thing, even though it was probably done way before then, since I ordered it on launch day. So I'm pretty bummed about that, but I guess that is what it is. I've also heard a lot of rumors about the Nexus phones, the 5X 6P, having issues on the initial pre-orders as well. Today is currently the 21st of October, and I'm pretty sure they shipped 2 days ago, but mine's still saying processing, so maybe it's not just Motorola. But oh well. So anyways, if you want to see future videos on the disassemblies, go ahead and subscribe to me. I have the upcoming Nexus 5X, Nexus 6P. I already have the OnePlus 2, and I'll be doing that one in the next day or two, so if you want to check that out as well. That's always an interesting phone to disassemble. It's always really nice on the inside. Just a few more screws to go. Got one here and then one below it. Now, I did miss a screw, and with this many screws in the back, you always want to make sure that you've taken them all out. So just double check, make sure that there's not any big strips of adhesive, and count your screws to make sure you got them all out. Before you start trying to disassemble the phone, you can crack a screen by putting too much pressure onto it, trying to remove the back off of it. So just something to be aware of. See, I missed that one right there. So let's pull this one out. And like I was saying, I left that volume button screw in, that silver one. It's halfway up the left-hand side of the phone, right where my index finger was at on my left hand. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the grommet down here for the battery connector. And this pops right out, and then we'll use our nylon sponge to pull the battery connector straight up. That'll disconnect all battery running through the phone. We do the same thing up here for the volume button flash connector cable. So we'll just use our spudger to pull out the grommet there, and then we'll need to pull this cable up. And I found the easiest way to do this is there's the little slide in the front, so put it in and then just push it downwards, and it'll pull up and right off. So just one of those little snap-on ribbon cable connectors. Now with all of those out, we can go ahead and pull back these two clips here on the frame of the phone, and that'll help us go ahead and pull the back cover off. So both those clips being done, you'll start to see the bezel separate from the mid-phone, and then pry up towards the charge port area first and then pull back the top. You may feel a little bit of resistance, so just kind of wiggle it back and forth. and it'll go ahead and pop right off for us. So now we have the two separation of the components here. We have the battery and then the logic board on one side. So let's take a look at the battery portion first and see what we can do. So we have a couple of pieces here. And we'll go ahead and actually see how easy it is to replace this battery. You can see the connection here for the NFC portion of the phone, which is attached to the back of the battery. It connects to these two contacts here. So we want to make sure we line that back up when we put the phone back together to make use of that still. So looking at this, it looks like the battery's just adhered to the back of the phone. And I wish I was smarter to realize it, but there's actually pull tabs on here as well. But we'll need to be careful with the NFC when we're pulling this battery off. So let's just put on here some double-sided adhesive and trying to find the easiest way to remove the battery. Looks like we're just going to gain a little bit of entry down the side here. We don't want to bend it too much. We don't want to puncture it at all. So going from the back side of the phone and pushing our nylon spudger underneath the back. And basically the adhesive runs down the left and the right side of the battery. So sorry it's a little bit off camera here. It's just giving me a little bit of a problem to get here started. So here we go. So we're just going to put our spudger in underneath, in between the frame of the phone and the battery. And if you stick to just barely on the sides of the left and right, you won't have any issues with the NFC portion of the phone. So we can pull it back and just kind of take a look down the side here. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side. You don't have to stress about any ribbon cables here either. That volume button cable goes right to the side of the phone, so it doesn't run underneath the battery or anything. It's still stuck on there pretty good. Went down both sides, so there must be some adhesive straight down the center as well. So we're just going to be careful as we pry this out. And then once I have it out, we can take a look and see where the NFC sits on the back side of the battery. Just taking our time to pry and get it to pull up, just taking a nice slow tug, so giving time for the adhesive to loosen. I'm just ripping it out. I don't want to damage that NFC portion. There we go. There you go. You can see the NFC is right smack dab in the middle. And these pull tabs actually will help you remove it. And there's adhesive just right here on the back side of the phone you can see as well. So right here is a pull tab. So like you kind of see on an iPhone 6. But honestly, the iPhones, I haven't had a ton of luck on using those pull tabs to remove the adhesive. It looks like if you do it this way, you'll probably leave the NFC portion on the back. No, there's no adhesive on the back of the NFC, so I guess it'll pull off as well. So there's the battery. It is replaceable with a little bit of work. And the NFC you could replace as well if anything happens to that. Alright, now the other portion of the back of the phone is this volume button, power button. Now we're going to remove the screw, but we're going to keep our thumb on top of both of these two buttons. The bracket may pop out and it may not. That's fine. If it doesn't, you just need to push it out a little bit. It's got some pins that are going to hold the button in. So if you need to replace this cable, you can do so. But be very careful. I made this mistake when I first did it and I had to kind of re-edit it here. But underneath these buttons are the tiniest little springs ever. So you can see them, two of them right here. One here and one here. These things are really microscopic. I almost lost one. It took me a little while to find it. Let's pop one out for you so you can take a look. And we'll talk about how to put these in. Now there's one for each side of the volume button as well. But we're going to keep that in. So the buttons are actually just like you'd see on the Nexus 6 as well. But to put these back in, you're just going to put them right in their little tiny holes, which are just to the left and the right of the slot for the power button here. You need to get them lined up. And you may have a hard time getting these in because they're kind of hard to line up, and it's really hard to show you on camera fitting it back into the hole. But you just kind of have to guess. And it'll always want to slide down the center of the power button. So you can see really just how tiny this thing is. This is probably the most difficult portion of this repair, is if you are going to remove this, just make sure that you are nice and careful with it. This can be kind of a trick to get back in there. Now when I first did it, I had undone the volume button, power button bracket, and I had it sideways, and I just pushed them out, and all four of them came out all at once. So just be careful of that and just take your time. Now that we have them back in, we can put our power button back in. What we can do is take our bracket. We're just going to put it back together so we don't lose them here real fast as well. So we'll put our bracket. We're going to push down just a little bit and that'll let the bracket slide back in, and we can put our screw back in the threads here. And this screw is also a Torx 5 as well. Perfect, there we go. Alright, now if you're looking to replace the actual volume cable, all you would need to do is use this little flip-up connector here. Pop this up, the ribbon cable will pop right out. Now on the back side, after you remove the volume and the power button, there's this metal bracket. All you need to do is just pull this bracket up, and that'll remove the power button, volume button, ribbon cable. Just put your new one in, and then reassemble it, and you're good to go. So nothing too crazy there. Pretty similar to what we saw on the last phone. So let's get back into the disassembly of the screen. So this is pretty much what we've seen on the prior Moto phones. The real unfortunate part is that the charge port is not separate, so it is not replaceable unless you solder it off, which is really unfortunate. So this cable here is for the touch portion of the screen assembly. And then we can see we have our screen assembly portion on the opposite side. So you can see this cable runs underneath the board, and it just adheres to the back of the SIM card slot. And then we have our display cable here as well. So really, to do this, we can pull back the tape. And you might think you can get away without having to remove the tape, but you will have to pull it up because it's over the ribbon cable and the connector itself, so it won't pull out unless you remove the entire thing. Once you have the cable connector flipped up, you can go ahead and just pull back on the left and right side after you get that tape removed. It'll be a little bit tricky, it'll be a little bit stiff to get removed, but it's okay, it'll pull out if you just give it a little bit of force. Just make sure you pull straight back. You can see that the watermark there kind of went a little crazy, but that's fine. So we also want to lift up the back camera, make sure it's not adhered to the frame as well before we pull it up. And same thing with the front-facing camera, just in a little bit of a grommet there. Now looking at it, we'll need to pull up the touch screen chip as well, which is right here, and it's just a pop-up connector. And looking at the phone, it looks like we're almost there. Still pushed down a little bit. There's actually a screw, one single screw down at the bottom of the phone that's still holding the board in, and it's right here. This black screw. So we'll go ahead and pop that off. Now with that done, it should come off pretty easy for us at this point. There we go. And then we can go ahead and just remove the logic board out. So here's the display assembly. And really, if you're going to replace the display on this particular phone, you want to buy the whole assembly. Replacing just the screen and the frame is a nightmare. I've done it on the second gen, and this one looks to be identical to that. So yeah, just if you're going to do this, if you're going to replace the screen, just bring for the frame and the display assembly. If not, if you want to check out how to do just the glass or just the display without the frame, check out my Moto X 2nd gen video and you can see that. Alright, so let's just take a look at, you can still pop a couple of things off here. So if you're looking to replace your camera, you actually don't have to remove the logic board out of the frame. You can just pop up the connector just like you did on the screen connector. And the front facing camera is just a snap-off connector as well, so you can put that back on. So if you need to replace that, not too crazy. We can actually take the back camera out as well. Let's just do that here real fast. So basically the same thing, just remove the tape off the back, and then we'll pop the cable up and see if we can't pull the camera out of there. Now, pro tip, put the adhesive on top of a piece of the logic board where you can get to, just remember where it went. It's always tricky to remember exactly where tape came out of a phone. So there you have it. That's the disassembly of the Moto X Pure. If you have any questions, throw them up in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. If you want to see future disassemblies, like I was saying, I have a few phones coming up. Go ahead and subscribe, and I'll get that as soon as possible. As always, I appreciate you watching. Hope to catch you on the next one. Peace.